I'm ready to slash and burn.
No border. I am going to be uncomfortable and all over you from start to finish.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Outside of the Box. And I have Christian Carlberg here with me, who has the honor of being the first person to be on my show three times. But this is the first time you've been on just yourself. So
yeah, came in with Jason, came in with Yeti. And that was both a lot of fun. But now it's just you and I. And
yes.
What would you like to talk about if it's just you and I?
Well, there's a couple of things, both involving Overkill in some way, which I don't know if I've mentioned it on the show, but if I haven't mentioned it, Overkill is one of my favorite robots of all time, mostly just because the design is like so crazy with that giant blade, and I love myself a good giant blade. So obviously there's a couple other people in BattleBots who I think like it too. So we'll talk about both the Destruct A Thon, because obviously that's going on. I'm sure people would kind of love to hear about that. And then
I'd love to talk about it.
Yeah, and with the Skorpios Sawblaze fight, in which the Overkill blade was used, I for one was very satisfied with it. Yeah. But
it went about as expected.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, just because the Destruct-A-Thon's going to be probably more of what we'll talk about, let's just kind of touch on with that fight, because sure. I was almost disappointed that I had been at filming and talked to everyone and wasn't aware that this was something that happened. It was a very well kept secret, apparently. And got to see it on TV, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like is Zach gonna do it? Is he gonna put that blade on Skorpios? And he did, and I was really excited about it. So
yeah, I'm sorry you didn't get to see it firsthand, but you did see the fight, as brief as it was. So that happened. There was a gathering in San Jose last year, and I just brought one of my two spare blades. I have two spare blades. I have a third blade that's used, that's still in pretty good condition, and I brought it with me, and we were just screwing around with Skorpios, and I just sort of put it up to the robot, and it looked pretty cool. So I said I'll very spur of the moment, and Zach and Diana are such super fans. I said, here, take the blade, just take it, and if you can mount it, great. And he's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, just don't sell it on eBay. But or if you wanted to get rid of it, let me know and I'll take it back. But I was very happy to give it to them and see what they would do with it. So yeah, I heard that they were going up against Jamison in that fight, and on one hand I was thrilled because Jamison is also a super fan of Overkill back in the days. In fact, it's very touching. He said Overkill was one of the robots that he gravitated toward, that attracted him to the sport, which was really touching. But it didn't seem like the right thing to do for that fight. Zach talked about the thinking behind it, why he did that. I like the idea of going after that. I never would have thought that he would know more than most people that like that idler is such a weakness for those type of hammer bots. But I think what he should do in the future is maybe make a special implement, like cut something more specific. Because when I first saw the fight, he had the blade mounted, but he had it backwards, and that was weird to me. Like I didn't understand, but he was really just thinking about the zigzag part of the back. So and all that made sense. But unfortunately, it was a fast fight. I would have loved to have seen that blade in a more traditional fight for Overkill. Overkill is best known for being able to go 3 minutes, take a beating, keep going, and basically breaking your fist with my face. That's what it's best known for. Yeah, it would have been nice to see like that version of Skorpios fight like Rusty. Nothing at all against Rusty, but I would love to see that domed head, have the blade come down, doing, on that very iconic domed head. Would be a lot of fun. Or some other fight that would maybe be more appropriate. But it was a thrill for me to be home, and kind of surreal to be home and watch a fight I had nothing to do with a part of my robot.
yes, I'm sure that that was very interesting for you. But I know that there was a lot of mixed reaction from the fans, but personally, I loved it. Like if I had a robot and I had an opportunity to put that blade on my robot, I would just do it. Like I wouldn't even have to ask anybody. I would just do it.
Right.
So I totally
Well,
understand the decision there.
maybe what they'll do is they'll water cut their own blade, but they'll only use it for certain fights. I think the biggest negative that the fans had, there was positive, negative online, and the only negative was around the fact that people wanted to see the hammer against the hammer. They want to see the hammer saw fight, which they didn't get. In fact, I think it was Kenny who summed it up. Said, "Hey, we still haven't seen our fight. We still haven't seen a Skorpios Sawblaze fight because that's they didn't come with their hammer saw." So I'm sure we'll see that in the future. I think it'll be a spectacular fight between these two great robots.
Yes, I am sure. And given kind of the way that the schedule makers have done things with this season of BattleBots, and given the fans a lot of fights that they really wanted to see, then this is a perfect opportunity to use that for the next season. So
Right.
hopefully we will. But obviously there's BattleBots going on right now, and there's other battle bots going on right now, that most people aren't privy to see because you have to go to Vegas to see it, and that's the
Yes.
Destruct A Thon show.
Yes.
Now, what was your first thought, when you were asked to bring Overkill for this?
I was really thrilled because Overkill is not a winning design for the current competition. For one, it's not legal. There's no active weapon. You can't. Another Overkill, because this new era of BattleBots is very damage oriented. Overkill is never a damage dealing robot. It was just meant to last. And so even if I brought it back, even if I could grandfather it in, it would lose by judge's decision every time. Because of damage. I would have to get the knockout or I'd lose. I wouldn't even have to worry about the judge's decision. It'd be a loss. And every time I thought about, and I've thought about this a lot, what could I do with Overkill to bring it back to make it like relevant and legitimate? And anything I like an undercutter blade, well, then that's just rotator. And rotators, and having all this other weight that you don't need for a really good undercutter or vertical, and there's so many verticals out there. A flipper, well, again, same problem. Like a lot of the weight goes into the as simple as it is, a lot of the weight goes into the survivability and also the bearing systems for the wedge. And just making it as reliable as possible. So I have some weight I could work with to give it an active weapon, but it wouldn't be as good as what's out there right now. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is something we've talked about a couple of times. We did an entire show essentially on that evolution of where BattleBots has come from and
Right.
where it is today, and
Right. So when they did call me about this Destruct A Thon, I thought, oh, this is perfect. They need a show, and Overkill is very, very flashy. It could take damage. It doesn't dish out a lot of damage. It's really perfect for this new format. So I was thrilled to have a chance to build a new incarnation and scale it down, make it more compact, more heavily armored, and just have some fun with it. And there were a significant amount of changes. The original Overkill had a 16-inch diameter wheel. I scaled it down to 13. And I replaced a lot of the aluminum with AR. So it's basically got a very hard shell, a gooey midsection, and it's got another hard interior where all the electronics and the motors are located. It was a lot of fun for me. I really was glad to have the opportunity to bring it back for the Destruct A Thon.
That is great. Now, obviously this is something that's really new for BattleBots, and it's a learning process. How has it been, for you so far as getting the robots built, and then, now with them competing, and obviously you have to make sure that if there's parts needed and things like that kind of gets filtered through.
Well, I'm told by the people that are working there that right now Overkill is fighting Malice. That's a fight that they've settled on. They tried Overkill with Diablo. They tried it with a Hydra. There's a few Hydra fights, and which is fine. But they've settled on Malice. Malice is one of the harder hitting. I think Malice and probably Nightmare and Diablo. I think the hardest hitting robots at the moment. But the Malice Overkill fights, their cheapest fight. It's different for them because they have to put on a good show, but keep the damage to a minimum, for cost. Otherwise, they can't be profitable. So I'm told that Bunny and I are the cheapest robot builders right now. I sorry to break it to you, Bunny, but we're cheap. So that's their favorite fight from the people that maintain the show right now. It's a great fight. There's a lot of damage that happens. Malice with that blade is bending the blade, which is a classic staple from the Comedy Central era. My blade would always get messed up in fights or get entangled in, especially with rotating weapons, and break their weapon. It's blowing off the wheels on Overkill. And then they just rebuild it. They put it back together and it fights for the next match.
How much time have you yourself actually gotten to spend at the venue with the robots and things like that?
Well, I've only been there twice.
Okay.
I went out there for the initial delivery, and the way I did it is because we're building 5 robots, and my robot's about 215 pounds. A lot of these robots are actually 300 pounds. So it's a lot of weight to move around. But even at 220 pounds ish a pop, I didn't want to deal with it. So what I did is I had all the armor, all the steel outside pieces that you see, shipped directly to Vegas, and then I built the cores, which are much smaller with just the motors and the electronics, and each one of those weighs 60 pounds. That was light enough that I could put 5 into my car and drive out to Vegas with it. And I did the final build in the day. I spent, what was fun for me and more of a challenge for me is to build this new Overkill, to be flashy, to work well, but also to be very, very easy, very, very clean for them to work on at the event. And there's still definitely some mistakes I made. I've learned some stuff. In fact, I had a conversation earlier today with one of the techs about like how we could even make some things even better for another batch. And I have a feeling that moving forward, they're always going to want a version of Overkill for the Destruct A Thon, because it is fairly flashy. There was a fight. I haven't actually been there live, but I've seen some behind the scenes stuff, and the Hydra fight was a lot of fun. Jake was out there, and he was his usual obnoxious self, which is good for the show, and people love that. But that was just like, it was 3 minutes of just Overkill getting thrown up, and just boom, 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 and driving around. And people, you could see people in the stands standing up, and they're really into it. So it's even though Overkill for this new era is getting the brunt of all the hits, it makes for a great show. It goes 3 minutes, people love it.
Yes. And I mean, really when it comes down to it with BattleBots and the entertainment aspect, like that's a really big thing. If people see a robot that they find interesting, no matter anything else, like that's what you want. That's the draw.
Yes.
So
It's a giant knife blade on wheels. It's very appealing.
I mean, like, I'm not going to lie. Obviously, the first time I saw Overkill, that was like, I was immediately like, what is that? And I think that's kind of the reaction that a lot of people may have.
Yeah. It was interesting. The original Overkill. So originally I built a robot called Toe Crusher, a little 60-pound little pick. Same idea. The body moves back and forth. And back in the day, you'd go through surplus catalogs, and I found these monster farm electrical motors, and you needed a certain type of gearbox, a certain type of motor to handle it, and because it has a package, that's the nest. And then I found these really cool golf cart wheels from Goodyear that you can't find anymore. And I looked at it, it's like, oh, I think this will fit. And it just, because I was able to find the items, that's how Overkill was born. And then we dialed in things like the front wedge, but then the knife blade went through an iteration where I made it look cooler over time, and chromed it. I went from a black oxide blade to a chrome.
Does, because I know that you love building robots so much, does doing the Destruct A Thon like kind of spur that desire to do it again and be like, hey, I want to make a robot for BattleBots again? Like, has that gone through your mind at all?
Well, it's always going through my mind, but I like the building and designing more than I like the 2 weeks of being there, to be honest. And this was great. This gave me the chance to build, redo something I'm very familiar with some of the things I've always wanted to try. Concentrate on little details that I know like people that are the techs would appreciate working there. And I mean, Trey, when it got there, because Trey was there, Trey Roski, owner of BattleBots, he's been doing a lot of the driving. There's a transition period where they're trying to get people, geared up and on how to drive these robots. But he is considering doing a demo, a Destruct A Thon plug at the next taping. Who knows what it could be? Maybe Overkill, maybe not. It would be nice if Overkill is selected for something like that, because Overkill can never actually be in the competition. This is the rules. But if they want to do a demo, like originally when we were doing the Destruct A Thon, and I found out that Jim Spandowski is bringing back Nightmare, I thought that would have been a great matchup, Overkill and Nightmare, because it's a classic Comedy Central. I'm happy with the Mouse fight. I'm happy with the Diablo fight, and the Hydra fight has been great. But I'd love to see a classic, or even Tazbot, the new Tazbots that Donald built. But maybe we could do that classic Nightmare Overkill fight as a demo for the taping of the show. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I found, especially this season, there's a lot more like other things that BattleBots is doing, or kind of like plugging in like some of these specials with like the past fights and things like that. That could also be another cool thing that could be added for viewers to see, because I mean, there's a lot of fans in BattleBots that have been really long time fans and tend to miss some of that stuff from the Comedy Central era. So I think, in ways, bringing that back a little bit could be a really good thing.
Yeah, I'd love to see some of that. That'd be fun for us.
Yeah, I mean, this really does open up a lot of interesting opportunities. And I think that that's great because, something that I've talked about with a few builders is just that the Destruct A Thon, I mean, I'm sure some longtime hardcore fans would appreciate it, but it's probably more geared towards people who aren't as familiar with BattleBots, and it's a blend, really.
Yeah, it's definitely a blend. So it is a live show in Vegas, and there's a lot of people coming through Vegas, and they're not going to Vegas to necessarily see the BattleBot show, but they might say, hey, there's a billboard. They thought, I know something about this. I've got kids that would like it. Let's go check it out. And it is a very good show, even though it's not quite the competition that you see on the TV show. There's been a number of builders coming to Vegas to check it out, just to hang out, to help out, and they're like, yeah, it's pretty legit. There's some serious damage. The trick is, it's a balance, but the trick is to have like a really good show and manageable damage. Like for instance, like Overkill, the wedge is all AR 400 plate, and it hasn't gotten bent or broken, but it has definitely gotten ripped off. So that's great damage. And then they could just buy new hardware, put it all back together, and it's still a spectacular show. It's ready to go for the next competition. So, but I think it's a great way for people coming through Vegas to have a chance to see something live. And there's nothing, even when you're home, the fights are great, but as you and I know, when you're there just on the other side of the Lexan, it's amazing. You could really feel that stuff. I would say the one thing that the old Comedy Central had, speaking of live shows, that we don't have now, is we had more combustion engines. You had a lot of that rumble that you'd feel out in the audience. Now that the technology is so advanced with brushless motors and battery technology, you don't need the ICE anymore. But I kind of miss that a little bit. There were a lot of robots back in the day that had that.
Yeah, that definitely is a big difference. And I mean, I think that, there's certainly advantages and disadvantages to both from a fan perspective, as far as like what you get out of it. Probably not so much watching it on TV, like you mentioned. It's very different in person. And this was the first time that I had experienced like what that actually feels like, being in the arena versus watching it on TV. So now I have a bit more of an appreciation for that.
Yeah, you have another layer. Yeah, yeah. I would urge anybody that has the opportunity to see the taping or the show in Vegas to go, because you get a sense. It's wild to see these robots flying through the space when you're right there, just on the other side of the Lexan.
Yes, yes, exactly. There's some things that, like, it's weird because some things seem bigger in person versus on TV, and sometimes it's the inverse of that. It just depends on what it is. So,
Yes.
yeah, it just really creates a unique perspective. So if you haven't gone, like, absolutely, if you find yourself in Vegas, at least go to the Destruct A Thon, because you will get some perspective, even though it's not quite the same as the normal BattleBots taping, but you still will get some perspective there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, from what you've seen so far with that, do you feel that, you know, it is having the desired effect, you know, that's drawing people in and people are coming out to see this?
I think so. They've had full audiences. I found the fights that I've seen interesting. They're getting, I don't know what robots they're getting, but I understand they're getting more robots. They're building up their stable. So they're going to have more options to play with their toys. I think you know they're gonna keep the same matchups for a bit, you know, because they have certain things dialed in. Like some robots are better with certain robots for a show and destruction and for the audience. I think the headliner right now is going to be Hypershock and Witch Doctor for a while, because those are two of the best known robots, you know, in the current day. But it'll be fun to mix and match other fights. You know, who knows what other classic Comedy Central airs they might be talking to you right now.
That is very true. So I mean, like, if fans haven't realized by now, if you're in the, you know, the BattleBots forums, there's a lot of people in those forums, you know, including the people that make the decisions at BattleBots. So if there's robots that you want to see involved in that, it's always a good idea to post about it and say something, because you never know, it could happen.
Yeah, yeah, I would, yeah. And the other thing that's kind of exciting for me is, like, I have an open invitation if I come back to Vegas. I've been there twice for setup. But I would love to come back and and actually compete in a competition. Or the show myself. I'm welcome to come and drive. I haven't done it yet. But again, I'm more of a serial builder. I like to design, I like to build, I like to compete too, but that's not why I do it. I do it because I just love to design.
Yeah, and there is nothing wrong with that. I would love see, I'm the opposite. I would love to drive a robot, but I acknowledge.
Oh, no, sorry. I love driving a robot too. I do like the competition, but I'm not doing it for the competition.
Right.
I'm doing yeah.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy being on the winning side of the fight.
That part's always nice. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's great for BattleBots. Anything that can draw more attention to the sport and get, you know, people interested that wouldn't
Especially
otherwise check it
kids.
out.
Especially kids.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, I can, you know, say from my particular trip to Vegas that I mean, there are things in Vegas that kids can do, but not a lot that I could see. So that's one show that kids could go to, and it's completely family friendly, and get them interested in, you know, building and robotics and things like that. You know, I think that's always a good thing.
Yeah. And it's probably fun for them to go back home and tell their friends about the TV show that they saw live.
Right, exactly. They can be like, "Hey, I saw Witch Doctor," or whatever, you know, whatever the case may be. Like, it's really nice, and the community is so great as far as, you know, being accessible. You know, I mean, I know at the filming, the builders were out with the fans. I'm sure that, you know, those that are involved there at the Destruct-A-Thon try to make time or ways for the fans to engage and interact and things like that as well. So always something that I find valuable and important. So yeah. Well, that's really exciting. So yeah, I hope people continue to check it out. I mean, is there any plan at this point as far as is this going to run like into the summer, or?
I don't know. I don't know what their plan is. I guess they because I basically delivered my 5 robots and said, here you go. And I went back to my life. There was about 6 months of my time to get this prepped and delivered. I hope so. I hope it keeps building. I hope that they come back, because even now I would love to make a few different changes to the design moving forward. So if I get that call and they say, hey, we need another 5 robots, then they must be doing very well. It must be building.
Right, which would be great to hear. So yeah, well, I do hope that it continues on. I hope that it does well, obviously. I hope that whether it be in Destruct A Thon or something else within BattleBots, that you have those opportunities to continue building and things like that and doing what you love, because I mean that's obvious, and I always love seeing people be able to continue on with things that they're passionate about. So hopefully you continue to get those opportunities.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thank you for this opportunity. I had a really good time talking to you one-on-one for a change.
Yeah, absolutely. I always love to have guests back on the show, obviously. And for everybody that's watching, because I was about to be like, depending on when this airs, the show is almost to 400 subscribers, which I am thankful for every single person that has subscribed. Please continue to do so. Really kind of shooting to get to that 500 mark by the 1-year anniversary of the show, which is coming up very soon. And that's very exciting. But obviously want to continue talking to people about robots and helping to continue to build interest in the sport. So, everybody keep watching and support combat robotics.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.